Okay, I'm going to start. Okay, we're going to start the meeting. Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Design Review Committee. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Member Cormain? Here. Member Kiesel?
Here.
Member Groudon?
Here.
Vice Chair Tomasello?
Here.
Chair Antleman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is a time we set aside for public communication to talk about any item that is not on tonight's agenda. Madam Clerk, is there anyone who would like to speak to us on any item that is not on the agenda?
I have no general public comment.
Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a consent item. It's item number 1, and this is approval of the Design Review Committee June 14th, 2023 meeting minutes. Any discussion, any issues? Then we're going to need a motion and a second.
Move to accept. And I'll second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Member Cormain?
Yes.
Member Kiesel?
Yes.
Member Groudon?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tomasello?
Yes.
Chair Antleman?
I wasn't here, so I'm abstaining.
Okay. Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move forward to the next formal item, which is Project 22-01, Day Road Apartment Design Review located at 54 Day Road. Has any member of the commission had any ex parte communication concerning this project? Okay, since there's none, we'll move forward. Staff, could you please make your presentation?
Sure. Okay, I think it's working. Sorry about that. Good evening, members of the Design Review Committee. My name is Tyler Walter. I'm an associate planner with the City Planning Department. Item before you is agenda item number 2, Day Road Apartments, Project 22-0161. Next slide, please. Subject property is located at 54 Day Road, immediately to the east of the Ventura College campus, near the adjacent intersection of Day Road and Telegraph Road. The project would encompass the entire area outlined in red. Next slide, please. The subject property is surrounded by a mixture of residential, commercial, and educational uses as depicted in this slide above. The architecture found in this area is of predominantly contemporary architecture, which the applicant has replicated in their proposed project. Next slide, please. For a frame of reference, the yellow outline represents the location of the existing project, and the red outlines nearby existing or entitled projects. The closest project to the Day Road Apartments project is the Tides project, which is located directly south at the intersection of Telegraph and Day Road, as shown above. Next slide, please. The existing site is composed of a single-family residential home, which would be demolished for the construction of the apartment complex. Per a 5-day posting by our independent consultant, the Historic Resources Group, the existing single-family residence was determined not to be architecturally or historically significant. The property itself is currently bound by fencing on the northern, eastern, and southern tiers of the property. Sidewalk of about 3 feet wide width exists currently along Day Road. Next slide, please. The proposed building would be a total of 15,176 square feet. With as a multifamily residential building. There would be 26 units, 4 of which would be low-income units, and there'd be 40 parking spaces provided. The 3-story building would consist of ground floor parking. The second story would contain the first floor of these 2-story apartment units, as well as a courtyard, and the third story would contain private decks and second story of the apartment units. Next slide, please. The building design incorporates block-like elements with variations in the color and material to break up the massing and bulking of the building. It features off-green standing seam metal and white stucco accent walls on the second and third floors to alleviate the structure's bulkiness. The first floor uses western red cedar wood and black metal finish for the vehicular entrance. Large black finished aluminum windows bring in natural light and add variation to the wall planes. Bay windows exist along the eastern and western sides of the building, as well within the courtyard, and are staggered by 1.5 feet, creating a visual effect and adding rhythm to the building's facade. Third floor decks and bay windows facing the interior courtyard are staggered by 2.5 feet, creating private balcony spaces with black aluminum railings, black aluminum safety railings. The repeated use of off-beam standing seam metal and white stucco across all units maintains consistency with the break-in pattern using the red cedar exterior. Next slide, please. The following diagram depicts the types of materials to be used for the construction of the building. Next slide, please. The building features open space in the central courtyard of the second floor, complete with seating areas and planters. Additionally, a small seating area is located on the ground floor in front of the study room facing Day Road. According to the 1997 design guidelines, each dwelling unit should have its own private open space. This project satisfies the requirement as all 30 units include private open space with decks measuring approximately 67 square feet, existing the recommended size of 48 square feet specified in the 2008 design guidelines. Next slide, please. The following shows public improvements for the proposed site. This includes, even though it's not shown in this plan itself, 9-foot wide sidewalks with a 5-foot wide sidewalk along the 4-foot wide parkways with 2 street trees facing Day Road. Additionally, there would be citrus trees and various canopy trees planted in the rear of the property. Next slide, please. Staff is seeking the following input from the Design Review Committee regarding landscaping, building materials, as well as downspouts and roofing. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Okay, are you complete?
Yes.
Okay. All right, committee members, do any of the members of the DRC have any questions of staff?
No, but I have a question or a request. We always keep our public timed to their 3-minute limit, but we allow the applicants sometimes to go, we're supposed to be 10 minutes with a 5-minute rebuttal. Sometimes they go for 35 minutes. I watched a video this week and the last one was over 35 minutes.
So I've been instructed to set a timer now for
Okay.
the applicant's presentation as well as public comment. So if you heard the phone going off, I was trying to increase the volume so that everybody could hear when the alarm goes off. So when the alarm does go off, then the applicant presentation is over as well as public comment. So 3 minutes for the public and 10 minutes for the applicant.
Thank you.
I can extend that time from 10 minutes if any of the members feel it's necessary.
I don't. If you can't, you should be able to present it in 10 minutes.
Request like a handout at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, just so we know we're going in general for 2 minutes. I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know.
You want me to just be like,
Well, we stand right there, so
okay,
thank you.
sure.
Okay, is the applicant present and do,
I had one other question for staff. In the packet materials, I'm seeing an architectural plan set, but I don't see a landscape plan set, and there's some specific questions related to, asking about the landscaping and is it adequate? Was there one submitted? I also didn't see civil plans.
A landscape plan was submitted in the planning packet. We didn't receive civil plans, just architectural plans showing the location of the apartments and the dimensions of that, as well as plant trees and where they would be planted.
The project plans link in the agenda does not have a landscape plan associated with it. There's also no sheet index, so I'm not sure, I wasn't sure if it was included or not.
so we have an incomplete package, is what you're saying?
I guess is my question.
It should be on, let me pull it up. Not sure what it should be in there.
Give us a moment to just take a look and confirm what sheet that's on.
Okay.
don't see a building section either.
So it looks like there is not a landscape plan in the packet. What I'd suggest doing is having the applicant make their presentation, and perhaps they can speak a bit more heavily on the landscape plan itself. And then if you should choose to, need more time to review that, we can continue to the next meeting if you need more time to look at the landscape plan. Otherwise, if you feel that the presentation and the information that's provided to you during this meeting is enough to make a determination on your recommendation, then we could move forward.
Well, it's going to be pretty hard for us to really provide review comments if we don't have a complete package. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels. I'd rather have the applicant come back with all the material that we need to do a complete review.
Agreed. I second that. This has happened a couple times now where we haven't had the landscape was missing.
Curtis, would you prefer to see a complete package or go forward?
No, of course, we need to see everything.
I concur. They should have a complete package.
Okay. Do we need a motion for a continuance then?
I wouldn't continue this. I think if the package isn't complete, I'm happy to have to give comments, if would be helpful. But as far as making the recommendation, I don't know. I guess that's my question, and I'm happy to hear from the applicant to see if there's been some misunderstanding here.
Member Kiesel, can you provide review comments without a landscape plan?
No, and is the landscape architect here today? No? Okay. So now he's... Yeah, it's hard for me to give comments. If the landscape architect was here, I could, ask questions and expect a presentation, but I don't have that.
Well, if we're going to do a continuance, we need a motion and a second.
I'd prefer to give some comments because it doesn't sound like it's the applicant's fault that we didn't get the full package. So should we penalize them for that?
Well, maybe,
Or at least be able to give them some feedback?
I'll listen to a motion and...
You have them?
I have a landscape plan, I just don't know how to go about sharing.
Is it possible? Yeah, either email it or project it, and perhaps the applicant can walk us through that in their presentation.
Or at the very least, can Member Kiesel look at your screen as well
Yeah,
and ask his questions?
Yeah, but why is it just committee member Kiesel?
Oh, that's...
No offense.
I'm sorry.
He's
I know, I can do is I can project it up to the screen. If everyone wants to wait a minute, I can print it out as well, which, no, okay. So I can project it up to the screen. I do have several sheets of landscape plans.
Okay, do you need a recess to do that?
Oh, I mean, it'll take a minute, but they are there. So do you want to look at them now, or would you like to go to public comment first and then come back?
Well, the next step is for the applicant to make his presentation to us on the agenda. So if we're talking about a minute or two, we'll just do a recess until you tell me you're ready to display the information. And I apologize for excluding you.
It's okay. I trust Jack the most, but on the other hand, I think we should all see it.
Yeah.
So I think put it on the screen is fine.
I'm going to post them as a supplemental packet to the agenda, and then you guys will be able to access them from your tablets.
That'd be great.
It'll just take me a minute to create a cover sheet and get it posted, so maybe,
Maybe I should have taken the iPad. No, it's probably on. I can get to it actually.
Oh, look, there's the landscape.
Here's the landscape architect now.
Just in time.
We wake you up.
Where'd you get? Oh, did you get the link yet? No.
No.
How do you get it from?
Go on to, on here, it'll be on, she's going to put it, attach it to our stuff. So, in here.
The Agenda Center?
Well, you have the agenda open though? I don't have your guys' iPad. I brought my own.
Oh, you have your own,
Yeah,
okay.
the one time I bring an iPad, they had me, which is awesome.
This is my first time using one.
Yeah, maybe we should have a little, how do we use an iPad? I don't use it, this is actually from my office, but it's not me.
Oh,
So, do you have this one, the special meeting, that one?
yeah. Well,
So,
Heather is actually going to
go to DRC.
Great, it's perfect timing for me. It's for me.
well, there it is again, yeah.
And somewhere in here, she's gonna attach it.
Are we good?
we're almost there. It
Okay.
just takes me a few minutes, so please just bear with me.
That's why we pay him so much.
Actually, I noticed it earlier today. You can project that show up there, and we can all watch.
It wasn't mine. I swear, it wasn't mine. I think it was you. It was all your fault. I'll share whatever I'm looking at, but I can barely see it. It's so little.
You can hack into their computers and start sharing.
to it. It's not.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, he does like to talk. I think he wants to go to his job.
It's just sitting there. Then the need to, everything is there. Yeah. Right. Probably a few things that had on 719 too.
This one's probably the
Fair started today.
Yeah, I was worried about traffic getting here.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, and parking.
Yeah. I'm going to Beck on Monday night, and it's at the Forum. I'm going to see Beck in Phoenix. Yeah, on Monday night, and Taylor Swift extended her concert shows to Monday night also. So there's going to be, they're already sending out messages that you're not going to be able to do. So my daughters are going to Taylor Swift tomorrow night, and I'm giving them a ride and dropping them off. Like, you're never going to get in. So if there's two concerts, one at the Forum, one at SoFi, it's going to be a nightmare. I don't even know that I want to.
And earthquakes. Don't forget the earthquakes. The swift quakes.
The Swift quakes.
Swift quakes. It's a thing.
Oh, I have one
2.3
daughter-
magnitude. Yeah.
I have one that's a little paranoid. She's worried about Stampede.
I know.
They're gonna have like 100,000 people in that place. And then they're gonna have those
Not interested.
Taylor Swift, and then
Just the X Games was bad enough.
Okay, I think they should be there, so if you
Okay.
if they're right next to each other.
So do you go to the agenda center or the?
Yeah, just go back to
They don't do the same night because they share parking.
agenda, yeah, there you go, and then scroll down to the item,
I don't know.
supplemental packet.
I can't see anything right now.
Would be this project here, to Bay Road.
This is nice. I have my own,
Thought I did.
my own professional tapper. Oh wow, look at that.
You got it?
You got it here.
Supplemental?
Got it.
There were civil plans too, then?
Okay, I'm reconvening the meeting. I assume the applicant is here and you wish to make a presentation? Please do.
We can reassess.
All right, is this one on? Can you hear me?
Don't they usually sit here? Doesn't the applicant sit here?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I can do that, yeah. Last time I was here, I did it up from the podium.
Oh. And then be sure to speak into the microphones, guys. Are they on? Are they? Yes.
Good evening. Good evening. I want to start. Can we pull up my presentation? This is it. Yes. This is Day Road Apartments. It's directly across from the east parking lot at Ventura College. The concept behind this project is that it could be used for the students and faculty of Ventura College. They're all one-bedroom townhouses, and with a courtyard. Can we go to the next slide, please? One more. With a center courtyard, there's basically 3 separate courtyards down the middle, each having a different function, but the overall function is just to create community. We've got, like, the first one is going to be like a barbecue area, and then we have a communal table that might be used for studying or just hanging out, and then we have one that's more planted in the back. You can go next slide. We have butterfly roofs and flat roofs, mixture of both. All of the gutters and downspouts will be concealed because we're already going to have roof drains and courtyard drains. Next slide. Yeah, we use a mixture of corrugated metal, stucco, and wood for the majority of it. We have, not only do we have the courtyards up top above the parking, but we have a little seating area in front of what's proposed to be a quiet study room for any students that live here. And in the back, we have more of a kind of backyard feel with a barbecue. Next slide. Go one more. This is the stair down to the backyard area that has a barbecue and some turf. Next slide. One more. And these are images of what the courtyard feels like. The top left is the front of the courtyard with the barbecue area. The bottom left is the center courtyard with the communal table. And then the other one's more of a the top right is more of like a peaceful, just kind of sit and read a book area. And then the bottom one is the backyard area with the turf and the barbecue. And that's my presentation. Anything to add, Brian?
No, I'm just here for questions.
You don't want to make a general presentation of the landscaping concept?
I think you already did it. I can add a little bit. There are several existing trees in I guess you all know the location is behind where Little Fresh and Easy is and everything. There's a row of small kind of pruned hawthorn trees right on the property line against a wall. So there's a wall, there are trees on the parking lot side, there are large trees in the parking lot, and then we've added a few trees in between, but that's pretty well screened on that side. And then at the back of the property, you can see, if you go back one slide, there you go. The turf area in the back is just meant to be one of those multi-use areas so that there's lots of room if people have pets or if, they have kids and want to run around. It's one bedroom, but still it's pretty decent scaled space. And then the front is much more urban, as he pointed out. And then the second floor courtyard design, it's a linear courtyard with the objective of breaking it up into different rooms. And that's it.
Do any of the DRC members have questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I have a question for the landscape architect. As far as on the ground floor lawn area, I noticed you had just one grill. It's a fairly long barbecue unit. Did you consider having additional grills there, or?
That usually is up to the, sort of the operator when we get down to construction drawings, but I do like to design in long counters because they're very useful for people to line up food, like, that you're not actually, you could bring food down or you could have food catered in. There's a lot of different uses for those. And there's a barbecue on the podium too.
Yeah, what kind of lawn is that?
To be determined. I don't know what it says on the plan. It could be a native lawn. It could be artificial turf. It could be, regular turf. It's in a pretty protected spot, so it's going to not be a heavy water consumer.
And enhanced paving, I'm having it's by this barbecue and table area. That's
Yes.
the only place you have.
Yes, and that's a permeable, sort of a permeable unit paver that would be in multiple colors probably.
Any thought to light wells to get some natural light down into that parking area?
No, we didn't consider that because we just didn't want people looking down into the cars. It's got a pretty generous lobby for bringing people in and a lot of this is more than 50% open to the sunlight so that we won't have to mechanically ventilate it. So there's going to be a lot of light coming in from the sides, front and back.
And how are you lighting?
I'm sorry?
How are you lighting this garage at night?
There's going to be ceiling mounted lights.
Mechanical equipment?
Mechanical equipment, we're just going to do small heaters within the units. and nothing on the rooftop except for vents and PV, solar panels.
William?
I have a question. What is it, you have, what do you call it, a courtyard? What is the distance from balcony to balcony on the courtyard, and then where you tighten up from balcony to balcony?
I don't remember the exact actual distance.
You don't have any dimensions on it, but it looks really
Yeah.
tight.
They are there. I think it's about. I mean, especially in the center area, those are pretty close. But I think the other sides are about 18 feet apart.
So the college kids are going to be jumping from one to the other, or maybe if there's any 16-year-olds in there. So what'd you say? I didn't.
Where the wider balcony area is about 18 feet, and I think the other area is somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 feet, maybe.
This is 12 feet.
Maybe it's a little tighter than that.
Looks like about 6. So is that done on purpose?
We were just
it's almost a bridge.
Yeah, well, the balconies being so close was not necessarily on purpose, but it was us trying to create not just one linear courtyard without kind of breaking it up. So I felt like you had different
squeeze it, open it.
Exactly.
Oops.
I have one more question to the landscape architect. Just on the second floor, I noticed you got 2 species of, trees, 3, and you have the two tabuyas on one side, then you have the olives on the, what was the reasoning behind the selection of those trees around these particular spaces?
Well, the olives are very farm-giving and they're evergreen and sort of make a large statement. So the intent was to have those where they, basically break space. And then the tababuya is a deciduous tree, which is, briefly deciduous here, but a little bit kind of more rangy and less architectural. So it could be anything. It's just what we have now.
I had a question on those too. So those are up on the podium, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then how big is the base? Just
well, the rooting area for most trees that's required, or if in nature, is about 18 inches. So we like to see our planters be no shorter than 24 on a deck or a podium.
and it's going to be raised.
It's
raised,
Oh,
not
for sure.
below, structured below
yeah.
or anything. Okay.
Yeah, and you'll have drainage above and below. And typically for larger trees, we like to go 30-36 with height.
Of soil.
Of soil. Oh, well, of planter,
planter.
and then you
Planter
lose,
where, yeah.
you lose 4 to 6 inches at the top over time, and then in the bottom, if you have drainage and stuff, you use a little bit of rooting area, but usually 20 inches is enough, but we like to do more.
And so those will be actually pretty substantial trees on the podium.
Absolutely, yeah. And the olives are really adaptable, kind of weedy trees almost. I mean, you can push them out of the ground, and the way people kill them is they overwater them. They're very drought tolerant.
And then what's the material on the podium deck there that you guys are thinking of?
What's the surface?
I'm pretty sure it was scored concrete that is integral color.
That's it for me.
I have a question about the standing seam.
Okay. Okay.
What is the depth of the seam?
Yeah, I've got to recall. I had on my material board. I have the depth. I think it's only about an inch to inch and a half.
Because I noticed you have the overhangs over several of the windows. So I was wondering, how do you put those overhangs with the standing seam? Do you cut the seam, or do you put them in front of the seam?
I probably put it in front of the seam.
Do you have an inch gap?
Just have a gap there.
I could help you have a 1-inch seam.
I'm sorry?
I said I could help you. You have a 1-inch
Okay,
seam.
thank you.
And so the surrounds around the window, are the windows inset?
The windows are inset.
And so what wraps there? Is it the standing metal seam material?
It's going to be probably not a standing seam metal material, but a metal material,
Okay, so how far do the windows are they set in?
a few inches.
That means 2 or more.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember the exact depth of what we're showing there.
And on that same line of questions, you don't have a detail of the window section?
We don't have a detail yet.
But so the metal's going to be metal, what is that?
The white stucco.
The stucco?
Yeah.
Is going to be wrapped stucco?
Wrap stucco.
Member Tomasello, any questions?
Yeah, just looking at it, it feels like a lot of impervious area. How are you dealing with stormwater on the site?
We have a stormwater management plan that we submitted. Most of it's going to be going to the back area.
And is it like underground chambers or what?
I'd have to review it again, but I believe it's underground chambers.
Okay. Hence the limited area for landscaping, I assume, then back there, and why it's proposed as.
That's why, yes, that's underneath the turf.
You had a roll-up door on your color and materials board, but I didn't see that anywhere.
They're in the community area and on some of the, I guess, north and south faces. They're just shown as closed. There's Juliet balconies.
On the day, then they're on the day side then?
They're on the day
I
side.
mean, not necessarily on the day side, but on the day end.
They're on the exterior sides of the building.
Okay.
If you look at the
Day and then wrapping?
yes.
On the day end?
So if right here on the front, you see there's 4 on the second level.
Oh, they're on the second level. That makes way more sense. Okay, so the lower level is just storefront.
The lower level is just storefront.
And they're both community.
One's the lobby and everything, and the other one's a
more-
quiet study area.
Okay. And then, are you done, committee member Thompson?
Go ahead, please jump in, please.
You only have your roof is going to be standing seam as well, right?
Our roofs.
The black stuff?
The black stuff, yes.
And then the white stuff is the PVC membrane that you have on here?
Yeah, that's for the flat roofs.
And that's on the flat roof, and you don't, okay, so you don't have I don't see the PVC, or
the standing seam roof.
It's okay, I know what it is.
Your stucco parapet, does that have metal coping capping it, or is it just a stucco detail?
It's probably going to be metal cap.
Okay, so be painted to match the
But
stucco.
painting the match, exactly.
Just wrap it in stucco.
We can do that.
It's actually better waterproofing nowadays.
I see that on the north and south sides, you, kind of on the sides of the building, it's shown as a decorative paving or maybe even a permeable paving.
It's permeable, like DG.
Okay, DG. So are those primarily intended to be walkways? I know that you show the trees in there, so I was like, well, is it paving, or how is that going to work?
Well, yeah, it's DG, and we went back and forth with the fire department for quite a while about fire access, and they kind of want a little bit easier way to get down the sides of the building.
So all the ladder access up to the
Yeah, the ladder access, and that our lot is deeper than 150 feet.
Right,
So we've got it.
Hello?
If there's no more questions, we're going to move on. Well, go ahead, Curtis.
In your project, you're constructing the perimeter wall as a board form concrete all the way around? So that's your wall?
There's existing masonry wall on the retail side of the building, on the south side of the building, and then at the back property line, there is currently a fence, and that'll be replaced with a masonry wall. And then on the north side, I believe that's going to be masonry wall.
It'd be masonry, CMU block.
It's block, it's not, there's a detail there for board form concrete.
That would be for the seat walls at the front. That would be for the front of the project that faces Day Road. It wouldn't be for the perimeter wall.
Just a clear-coated block wall?
Correct. And then, yeah, the board forms on all the seat walls up front.
Okay, if there's no more questions, then we're going to move on.
Last question.
Okay.
Is there any low wall at the areas on the, for the parking structure in the areas that are open? Or is it just, you're able to basically walk in and out of the?
You can walk in and out. There's a curb, so a car stopper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on then. Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item?
I do have 2 members wanting to speak on item number 2. So I'm going to open up, I'm going to call your name, and when I call your name, come up to the stand here, and if I pronounce your names wrong, please forgive me. And you'll have 3 minutes, and I guess at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I will raise my hand, and that will give you your cue that your time is coming to an end. So our first speaker is Stephen Quat.
And Chair, would you mind opening the public hearing?
Pardon?
Would you mind opening the public hearing, please?
Oh, okay, I thought that did open it. Okay, the public meeting is open.
Yes, go. My name is Stephen Quat. Thank you for having this meeting. I have a question. I saw a small single-family home and a lot of dirt on the lot, and now I see just a massive blacktop concrete. Where's the water? Where are the berms? What are they doing to capture the water when we do have rain? I don't see anything. I just see it washing out into the ocean. The project should have more open ground to capture water. We have enough problems with water. We need to be able to capture what comes out of the sky, put it in the ground, and recharge our groundwater. I don't see anything here that's doing that. And I think it should be part of every project we do, not just, especially that was just a small house and 80% of that lot was dirt, which will be absorbing that rain when it comes, not washing out into the street. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bob Guthrie.
You pronounce my name perfectly.
Good. I have a little practice.
Okay. Does this thing turn? Yes. I've got just a couple of real general comments. I think the building looks reasonably good from the west elevation, the Day Road side. It's functional. It's got some nice articulation and nice use of materials. But I think it needs some work from the north and the south elevation, especially the north elevation, so that it will be highly visible as you come down Day Road. And it's just a single-family home next to it, so the whole thing will be visible. I know it's called you called it a butterfly roof, but I think from street level what you're going to see is just a bunch of repeated shed roofs. And to me it's a real long space and it looks pretty monotonous. So I don't know if something could be done to make that roof line a little more interesting, but those are my only thoughts on it. Thank you.
That is no additional speakers on item number 2.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing, and we'll open this up for the committee to deliberate. Does anyone have any comments or concerns?
I want to address the public speakers. I think we agree 100% with you on the retention of water. Most architects do too, and hopefully they are doing that. That's something that we can't control, unfortunately, and they should be just responsibly controlling their water. No water should ever leave a site anymore. That's just the way it should be everywhere. It's not necessarily here, but it should be. It is in some cities. And it's not a butterfly roof, so your question about that is absolutely correct.
Member Kiesel, any concerns on landscaping or?
Just a few minor comments. I think overall it's a really nice project, especially considering the one we saw just before. So
compliments to the applicant and their consultant team. I think one thing I noticed on the trees, the Christmas trees that are on the side of the building, that seems a little unrealistic because they're so close to the building, and I'm questioning how they're going to grow, and that's on the ground floor. I know you guys are trying to keep that access clear for fire, as I understand it, understood, but I'm wondering then how the trees are going to do, and if there's any other way you could mitigate for that. Maybe some articulation of the architecture to allow some cavity for those trees to grow, if indeed you have to have the trees. I just question how well those are going to do. And they're going to be rubbing on the building, and there's going to be maintenance issues. I've seen that many times, especially with, sometimes we do get some crazy winds. That would be one comment. I think, why not throw another grill in there? Because sometimes you do have conflicts with people, different parties. You have the space there. Just something to consider. And then also, please, I would discourage the use of any kind of artificial turf. Crappie is a great use, or something of that nature. Also, when you talk about stormwater, that would be a good place for infiltration. Maybe you guys are probably, I'm sure you've already had discussions to that, and look forward to seeing what you guys do with that. I agree with Bob in that was it the north elevation, the two side elevations, it's interesting on the ends and the front, very much so, but the side elevations do look a little monotonous. That's something I kind of noticed right away. Again, maybe I would look to the architect, see what suggestions they might have to kind of break that up. I do see you have the material changes, which I think that does help a little bit, but maybe more of that. You know, and then that roof line is rather flat too, even though you have the like kind of butterfly shed roofs kind of up there going in different directions. I think that's interesting, but right now I just don't have any suggestions, and again, I'll leave that to the rest of the committee.
Member Kiesel, I believe I mentioned that the area was open. Could some type of screening or grid be put in there with vines, or
Instead of the tree?
instead of the tree? Yeah.
Yeah, that could be appropriate. I can understand that desire to maybe have some privacy from that Starbucks area, and you know, do the residents want to be looking out down into that parking lot? I believe there are trees along there, correct, on that one area? So hopefully those trees that are existing are doing most of that. So then do you really necessarily need a tree in those side yard access areas? Maybe not. Maybe then it could be some vines or something to that effect.
Have any other comments from the DRC?
Well, actually, the articulation on the north and south sides, I think for my taste, are sufficient. There's a breakup with materials, massing, setbacks, shadows. So I think there's a lot of articulation on there. It's subtle, but I think it works for the design. The issue of water, I'm not sure how it is conducted off of the deck, and then whatever splashes into the garage area, how that's collected and conducted away from the building. Again, we don't have a sense of the lighting or location of downspouts, and how they interact with the courtyard.
We could reopen the public hearing and have the applicant address those issues if you'd like.
Well, I would say let's get the other comments.
Okay. Member Tomasello?
Also, we don't have building sections. And I
We
think
don't. It's missing.
That's missing.
Yes.
And that's necessary
Agreed.
for these.
Agreed.
Understand this building. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I generally like the massing of the building. I do think that the north and south elevations are a little extensive, and I think I would be in favor of trying to see some break in the massing on the north and south elevations. I noticed that there's a surplus of parking on within this parking structure, and I didn't see any provision of any bike parking spaces, and given this site's proximity to the college and the intended tenants of this space, I really would like to see some more thought going into providing some dedicated, enclosed, and secured bike parking spaces, even if that meant removal of a couple of parking spaces to accommodate that. I'm concerned with some of the landscaping areas just because of how much hardscape is around it, and because some of the site constraints it sounds like you're dealing with related to stormwater and fire access. And I question the viability of some of those areas, but I'm no expert, so I certainly defer to my colleague here and to the design architect, landscape architect.
Does anybody have any concerns about setbacks?
The front setback I think is sufficient. I'm okay with that. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I think the front and the rear setbacks are less than what's required. Is that my understanding from what I read?
I think the rear setback meets, there's a staff comment on that. Says the applicant provides a 24-foot 8-inch to 25-foot 9-inch rear setback where a 25-foot setback is required. So they are a little short.
The front setback is 20 foot is required, 10 to 14 foot is provided.
So the plans call out a 20-foot rear yard setback. It could be 25, but that's what the plans were calling.
I guess I don't have an issue with the front setback because of the drive-through Starbucks facade and the adjacent property. So, I mean, this is reasonable distance from the street.
Before we motion, would it be do you feel it would be a good idea to open the public hearing up and address some of these issues with the applicant? Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing and ask the applicant to come back up.
Okay. I wrote down a couple things. We do have short-term bike parking at the front of the building, but we could definitely add some long-term bike parking inside the garage somewhere that's secure. The setbacks, we actually, this project has a density bonus, and it's using its concessions and waivers to reduce the setbacks.
So on the plans you have 20 feet. Is it actually 25 or is it 20?
You know, I thought it was 20 when I did my code analysis, but I think I was told it was 25.
Oh, okay. So the plans are incorrect, so that should change.
It's a possibility.
I also don't see a concession or waiver request for the rear yard setback, so just a heads up as you head into planning commission, or if that's, yeah, assuming where you're going.
Yeah, I might need to revise my concession letter.
Are you planning for electric charging stations?
Of course,
Okay.
yes.
And for solar?
Solar as well.
And I assume it won't be on the flat roof, it'll be on the sloping roof?
It'll probably be on the sloping roofs, especially on the south-facing roofs.
Are there any rooftop equipment?
We're doing internal heaters, and no AC, so it's just going to be just any of the plumbing vents and whatnot.
So Brian, as you know, I'm not a landscape architect. I'm not a landscape architect, but could some type of mesh, metal mesh, be used on the ground level to get some vines or some plants?
Yeah, I had a couple notes to, we can certainly study an alternative approach to adding some greenery to help to break up the north and the south elevation. I'm thinking, a vine on a simple structure might make good sense on both. I mean, something that's clingy that might wreck the building is probably not a good idea, but we can probably come up with a good approach for that. And then instead of just having a permeable material on the two side yards, we can certainly look at that being a low ground cover, which I think the fire department would be okay with, and that would help to green up the project just a little.
So if that was included in a motion, you wouldn't
That's fine.
have problems with that?
Unless the fire department says no, but yeah.
No, I think they can overrule us. William, any?
Well, since you're up here and you don't have sections, what is your parapet height on flat roofs?
I believe it's about 24 inches.
Okay, I have comments, but I don't have any more questions for the client.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll close the public hearing.
I had one question, I'm so
We'll
sorry.
open it back up again.
Is there a difference in the height of the areas that you have the wood?
The areas that have the wood are just a little bit lower than the parapets.
A little bit lower than the parapet.
Like a foot, but in this lower angle, it doesn't represent that.
Okay. And it looks like it's coming proud.
It comes out, and they have deep balconies in that area. That's where the courtyard kind of pinches down, because I pulled the units in and gave them north and south facing balconies that are kind of enclosed in that cube structure.
Mm-hmm. And are the balconies on the courtyard side of those units necessary? I know that there was some concern of them being super close together.
I believe they can be a little bit redundant, so we could probably eliminate the ones that are really close to each other.
Okay.
Okay, public hearing is closed. And now we'll go into deliberation. So, do we need any more discussion on anything?
I have comments.
Okay.
I think the project overall, especially on the day side, it addresses the street really well. Its first floor is public. There's transparency. It feels like there is a connection between the street and or from public right of way to semi-private to also private to semi-private on the end. But I think that's really successful. I don't think the courtyard is actually a courtyard, and I don't really have a problem with that. You have constraints to your site, and it's narrow, but it's not a courtyard. It is open space, and for a college kid going to VC, great, that's fine. I think that the elevation, the front elevation is successful. I have no problem with the 3 stories or the massing. I think that the side elevations, they are fine, but what happens is it's like I don't know, it feels like long solo where it's just going over and over and over, and that's because of the length of the site. And I think that you are breaking it up. It is articulated. It does have shadows. It has material changes. It has depth changes. It has depth changes from vertical to horizontal. But what happens is it being so long, the site being so long, it is monotonous, and it's going to be monotonous from driving down day or even going up it. But I'm not necessarily saying that's a criticism. That's what it is on the site. I don't think you should come in and put some other building in between it. It's just the reality. I think the way that you actually address the length of it is appropriate, and you did it. And you have shadows, you have overhangs, and there's going to be shadow lanes. Maybe not on the north side because you don't get shadows, but you're going to get them on the south side and things like that. So I think that I don't know how else they could really address that to make it any better. I do wish you would supply sections though, because sections for me are pretty much everything. I concur 100% on the bikes. Have plenty of bike parking, even if you got rid of a car. I mean, that we're hoping that those guys, I mean, hopefully they're going to walk to school. I mean, if it is actually all VC people, but it's probably going to be others. But a bike parking would be great. I think the landscaping looks good. It's good to me. It feels like your olive project chewed up, regurgitated, and spit back out on a bigger site with less room and in between it. That's not necessarily a criticism. It's just the reality. I know that that's the way it is. They're very far apart from each other, so it'll be fine. But I think it helps the area, and we don't have college housing, so I encourage us to have these type of units in that area. And did I say that the proportion from open glazing space to solid space, I think is really well done. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm generally in agreement with Commissioner Groden. The aesthetics I enjoy. It really does ride between residential and modern and urban. I think it would be a great asset on Day Road, particularly it's gearing towards the students. I appreciate the variety of materials and colors, and the massing of it, I think, works. It's less of a courtyard, more of a street, kind of a pedestrian street, and I think that's fine. I think it would create opportunities for people to interact, and in this environment with the college, I think it'll be very successful. I don't know what you could do with the massing. I think, like I said before, what you attempted, I think, works for the most part. And, given this is kind of an urban project and there isn't much space for landscape, I'm not too concerned with the landscape, but I'll let my fellow commissioners maybe make suggestions for that. But I generally approve of this project.
I have one more comment. Personally, I think that your solar should go on your flat roofs. You have a parapet, even if it means extending your parapet a little bit, and don't put them on what I consider a shed roof, your butterfly roofs. Because then they become visible, and the roof's not bad. I mean, you're really not going to see that slope of a roof unless you're in the apartment or in the unit looking up. But I do think that it becomes much more visible, and it looks like you have enough space on your flat roofs to have enough solar. So they would not be seen at all, I don't think. That's my opinion. I'd rather not see the solar unless you're going to do, I guess the Tesla roofs, but you're not doing that, so.
I have one more comment, just looking more and more at the siding. I think what kind of bothers me just a little bit is it's so symmetrical. You have the two dark siding or cladding there, and then on almost, it's pretty equal. You have these three white and green, boxed facades. And then maybe there was, if you were to break that up a little bit, not having to completely redesign things with how you use the materials, I think that might help it a little bit. Obviously, you don't want to introduce too many materials because then it gets a little crazy and it looks a little forced. But that was just something, whether you would bring in those corrugated green kind of sheet metal you got there, maybe bring that or expand it a little bit. And maybe that might start to help.
Member Tomasello?
I don't have any further comments, and I concur with my colleagues here.
Okay.
I should probably make it clear that I do not concur with the change in symmetry. It is very symmetrical, with the exception of that the green wraps around the corner at the front and it doesn't at the back. But I don't think we should remove the symmetry. It actually works, I think, with the inside, which it reads from the outside that's where it squeezes in, and that kid can jump from the balcony to the balcony, and that's where the material changes. So you're actually reading it from the outside, and then when you're passing through, and no one's gonna know that probably. But it's like Richard Meyer saying it relates to 4 miles over, but it does. It relates to the passageway of the building, and I think it's appropriate. I don't mind. I don't think there's anything wrong with symmetry.
I agree with you also, and I agree with Member Cormain's comments. This is a well-done project. It looks really good, and I think it'll be an asset to the community. So what we need at this point is somebody to make a motion.
Well, my motion would be to approve it as it is, but I know that there's people that want to change things, so I'm not going to make a motion.
Member Kiesel, is there anything that you would have concern or want to add to if a motion was made for approval concerning landscaping?
Just very detailed stuff again, to rethink the trees in the side access. That would be part of the motion. I think we talked about that. I would also strongly discourage the use of AstroTurf to discourage the applicant from having to feel like they need to go there. I think more and more evidence is pointing out to how toxic and that stuff is, and I think more and more people are realizing that it's not a viable option or material to be using in the landscape. I think, again, more study of the stormwater, but I think that's going to be coming anyway once the civil really gets their teeth into this project. It's still early. And then maybe an extra grill. I mean, that's pretty basic. I think the Paseo kind of courtyards are, I think, well articulated, and I think there's, I like the way they break up some of the spaces there. And so that's kind of those are like the only really kind of concrete things I would add to the motion.
Would you be comfortable adding additional bike parking space?
Yeah, additional bike parking.
Member Tomasello, is there anything that you would like to see in a motion?
I think I've captured quite a few things. Should I?
Sure, go ahead,
give it a try?
please.
So I'd move to recommend design approval of the project with the following conditions. Windows should be recessed a minimum of 2 inches. Remove parking in exchange for long-term enclosed secured bicycle parking, ideally 1 space per unit. All exterior site lighting and building lighting should be dark sky compliant, fully shielded, downcast. Consider adding vines on the podium level on the north and south sides. Consider replacing DG material with ground cover landscaping on the north and south sides. Consider reducing or removing the balconies that pinch at the courtyard. Reconsider the trees on the north and south sides, and reconsider the turf at the backyard area for natural landscaping material or a pervious hardscape.
Could I maybe a moment about the DG or ground covers? I don't know that you necessarily need ground covers. What about, or gravel is probably a better material also for stormwater, less likely to track and rut, and I think easier to maintain over time. Could we amend that to say gravel?
Sure.
And you could put some plantings in there too where appropriate, where room allows.
Could staff amend that recommendation accordingly?
Like crushed gravel.
So consider ground cover or crushed gravel on the north and south sides of the walkways.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Member Cormain?
Yes.
Member Kiesel?
Yes.
Member Groudon?
Reluctantly, but yes.
Vice Chair Tomasello?
Yes.
Chair Antelman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. I'm going to call a 5-minute recess before we move on to the next item.
So nice to have. You like that? Yeah.
Too many requirements.
I know that I probably instigated the comments on the balconies, but I like the way that it smashes together.
Well, I said consider.
I'm not requiring.
I said yes. I agree.
It says yes. Good. Thanks for those comments.
Thank you. It's pretty detailed, but I know it's kind of early. You know, it's like how much do you want to get into that? But that was one of those trees. I like to see that working right against the building, and they're not going to do it. I've seen that so many times. And then, like, we're trying to do that too. Like, they go, we got to get screening, and you don't have the room, and you just smash them in there, and you're.
Sorry, Jack.
But
I didn't mean to. I did
the
not mean
elevation where I just got shit. I could see it either way. I guess I could see that too, but I'm just like I struggle with things that are too symmetrical. I like asymmetry and general. Was that? Oh, I knew it was. I knew you were gonna start bringing examples on me.
I'll just.
No, you need Salt
It
Institute.
has. I get it.
What was the?
I wasn't gonna fight it.
It ain't no without.
It was to reconsider. There was no artificial.
Yeah, I know. But it's like again, compared to what we saw last time, this is like some shining beacon on the hill. Oh, that. Were you here like when we denied that one project?
For natural landscape?
Yeah. Oh my God, that was just awful.
That was so bad. I guess
Okay, but for natural materials.
It's the only place where it's so expensive.
Yeah. Instead of me having to rewatch. I have been like talking funny. We watched. I don't know what is going on with me. We watched. Oh God.
Yeah, okay. See, that's what it doesn't seem.
There isn't any bottles of water. Bottles of water. If you could, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, but it should be along in the back. It should be like the same, isn't it?
No, it does. Just
I think it's the. Is that a dark hit? I put right. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So like, yeah, she goes by. Yeah.
Got two more. Yeah, that's what you meant.
fact, you know, they've been allotted one of 7 community colleges in the state. Housing on campus. So that have been cited to begin this year on the side of the course. The four-year universities are complaining about that funding, so they put it on hold. So they're not going to build that housing right now.
Yeah, the Uniform School District, they're also considering putting some housing over 27 acres.
It's crazy that the 4 years, Cal States are saying, no, that we should get that money. We need housing here. Well, we have 25, you know, we have almost 25%.
I apologize for that. I should have just said yes. I'm so glad you made the motion. Thank you for making the motion. If we go back, I just say yes.
I don't take it personally.
I was just slightly reluctant.
Too many?
There were a couple that I didn't agree with, but it's okay. You didn't do anything. You didn't. There were no big demands. They were all tiny demands, but a lot of little ones. No, it was a good motion. It was clear.
Next applicant's printed it out.
Is it different than what we have?
It'll be his PowerPoint, so if you can't see his slides, then you can follow along here.
20% of community college students in California are housing insecure. Right? Living out of a car, couch surfing, whatever. So, you know, it's just
I have staff these
drives
days.
me nuts.
Yeah. Tough times.
No one since Levi's left. Wow, that's a record. Like 2 weeks. Like 2 months.
Protests from four-year universities. And when they're going to housing.
We get that a lot.
Well, when I see you out, and then you guys, I see you guys walking together a lot. Like,
You know, the good thing up at Cal Poly is that, you know, the labs are open 24/7. Some people never leave.
I have an
Place to
architect.
go. You see a sleeping bag. Yeah. But when I was there, it was expensive. Well, it's expensive. Now, when I had a one-bedroom apartment for $85.
Yeah.
And then they raised my rent to $90, and I told my wife we
I
can't
always thought it
afford
was weird that I wasn't.
So we bought a house. And then we paid $137 a month for a 3-bedroom house.
To another architect. I know it's a lot.
Where was that? It happens pretty much. I mean, it's not crazy uncommon.
1,200 square foot, 1960 building, no insulation.
One of the planners.
You know, for a guy and his wife, no kids, it was great.
And I always wonder if they just talk planning 100% of it.
Insulation's over.
I don't like.
Yeah.
Do they?
They do. They say we are not talking about work.
We're gonna wait, as soon as the clerk gets
Talking about
back,
my work.
we'll reconvene.
I don't talk about my work at home hardly ever. I like to leave it.
Yeah, you have to state why.
Likes to bring the work home. What do they do?
She's applied.
Okay, attention everyone, we're going to reconvene the meeting at this point. Could I have some order, please? Okay, we're moving forward with item number 2, which is project 15391, Park Plaza Design Review, located at 701 East Santa Clara Street. Do we have any ex parte communications on this between any of the members?
Mr. Chair, I'll need to recuse myself from this item as it's the company that I work for that is the architect for the project.
Okay, Member Tomasello is excused, and we'll move on with 4 members then. Okay, could we please have staff's presentation?
Yes, thank you. Tonight we have agenda item number 3, mixed-use building, Park Plaza. I'm Jamie Peltier, principal planner, presenting on behalf of our contract planner, Kim Zupinger. Next slide. The subject site is a 27,500 square feet located at the intersection of Fur and Santa Clara. within the downtown specific plan T 5.1 zoning district, which is just outside of the urban core T 6.1 zone. The subject site is less than 30,000 square feet, which the DTSP has a provision that mixed development standards would apply, but this project is under the 30,000 and does not apply. Next slide. The parcel is currently developed with a 19,500 square foot, one-story Spanish-style office building with 12 surface parking stalls at the rear of the building. The existing architecture consists of Spanish building with stucco walls, large windows, and a red clay tile roof. The building was reviewed by HPC, and a phase 1 was conducted by Rincon Consultants. This concluded that the building is not historic and ineligible for a historic designation. Next slide. The surrounding uses include a mix of businesses, residences, and the open space, the park across the street. The AT&T building is situated along the eastern property line, a one-story chiropractor office across the street on Santa Clara, and a two-story single-family residence along the alley. And the Plaza Park is just south. The post office is located to the west, and other 1- and 2-story buildings surround the area. The immediate streets are well connected through an existing sidewalk network, and First Street is a 2-lane local street that connects with Santa Clara that leads into downtown. Next slide. So some background to the project. This site has gone through several conceptual design reviews, all of which that have been reviewed by the Design Review Committee. So on the left-hand side is the 2018 iteration. This was a mixed-use project with 77 units, 3,000 square feet of commercial, where they received several comments from the DRC. Subsequently, in 2021, another conceptual project was presented to the DRC. This was for 63 units, 5,000 square feet of commercial, and also received comments from the DRC. Next slide.
Okay, thank you.
Not done.
Oh.
Plenty more.
Okay.
This is where it gets good.
Sounded like you were finished.
Sorry. On January 18th of this year, the DRC reviewed what will be the current project that you'll see in the next slides. These are the comments that the DRC in January at that time provided. We will discuss each of those comments throughout each of the following slides. Next slide. So the current proposed project details in the site plan have generally remained the same since January, and so there's no significant changes to the building footprint or the overall site design. But the project consists of a 5-story mixed-use building with 80 residential units, 2,400 square feet of ground floor commercial, using the commercial building block building type identified in the DTSP. All of which the building block and the frontage types will be reviewed with consistency prior to Planning Commission. The project incorporates 90 off-street parking spaces in a 2-tier subterranean garage that can be accessed from First Street. The current alley is 10 feet, and the project incorporates an additional 10 feet for two-way traffic in and out of the parking garage. Surrounding the parking garage are ground floor uses such as residential amenities like office leasing spaces, conference room, lounge area, live-work units. At the corner is the commercial space with access to the outdoor corner plaza. The upper floors contain approximately 20 residential units, give or take, on each level, with a podium courtyard on the second floor and a rooftop terrace on the 5th. The project design also proposes a new bike lane and bus shelter on the corner on the Santa Clara side. This is in the red box on the screen there. Next slide. The proposed project, so here's a detailed image of the new site design element that incorporates the bus shelter and the bike lane. This is to further promote the goals and policies of the DTSP, to promote bikeability within the downtown area and reduce disruptions to the cyclists and the pedestrians. Next slide. The DRC provided comments regarding sidewalk widths and requested to see 12-foot wide along both Fur and Santa Clara Street. The project proposes varying widths and they widen when you get into the entries of the ground floor spaces. They range from 8 feet, which is the current sidewalk width of the right-of-way, into as wide as 12 feet, 7 inches. Next slide. The DRC commented to step back all of these sides on the top floor. The project currently proposes about 6 feet along the alley side and 6 feet 11 inches on the Fur side. Next slide. Here are the next slides. You're going to see a lot of before and afters of the design changes, along with a comment from DRC. So here are the Fur Street elevations. The DRC comment was to make modifications to the facade on the west portion of the building along Fur Street to make it appear more unified as its own building segment. So on the bottom is the after, where you can see on the western side of this Fur elevation, they changed the color and material along with the frontage of the entry. Next slide. Here are the Santa Clara Street elevations. The comment that the DRC provided was that the building height just not to exceed 75 feet. They stay within that limits, but have shifted and kind of changed the massing at the 5th floor, including reducing the height of the chimneys. Next slide. Here are the alley side elevations. Some of the colors and materials on this side have changed. Next slide. The interior side, adjacent to the AT&T building, the comment was to remove and replace the metal siding on the east facade. So the applicant has changed the colors and materials here to all one color. Next slide. And the open space, this is the open space on the rooftop. The DRC's comment was to maximize the open space. The applicant has, again, shifted some of the open space areas from one side to the other and rearranged some of the planter areas. Next slide. Here's the open space on the podium level. This, again, to maximize the open space on site. An additional DRC comment was to consider widening internal corridors, specifically on the podium level. Here are the changes that they've made, the before and the after. Next slide. Here are some of proposed renderings on the open space. Open space areas which were not present in the previous sets of plans that were presented in January. So these are some images of those open spaces and how they're going to be used. Next slide. And the corner plaza, the DRC commented to revisit the corner plaza design to possibly enlarge or create just a more open feel. Generally, the corner plaza area has remained the same, the landscaping, and there will be tables and chairs. Next slide. So staff's recommendation is really geared towards the DRC to ask the question, has the applicant sufficiently addressed the DRC's comments from January of this year? Are there any additional comments or recommendations that you would like to provide? But with the acknowledgement that this is a housing project and we would like to condition, if possible, any of the design modifications so that we can recommend the project to Planning Commission to approve the design review. And this completes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the members have any questions of staff concerning the presentation?
I have a question on the staff report. In the summary, the issue comes up again about the limitation of the number of hearings we can have. It came up last the June meeting, and so I felt we were being kind of pushed to send this on the Planning Commission, even though that particular design was very questionable because of the five review issue. And I just would like some clarification on that, because does that go for all housing projects? Particular projects that are only going for variations? So, how are we, because it feels like it hamstrings us from having a project come back for if it's just needs to be reviewed more by us.
Sure.
As opposed to being already pushed forward to the Planning Commission.
Sure. The housing state laws only allow for a project that incorporates housing of any sort, 5 public hearings. So the project has gone to 1 DRC meeting. This is its second. We need to account for the future hearings that are potentially going to occur, it going on to Planning Commission, potentially appealed to City Council. So we have to leave room for the other hearings to occur as well. So while it may feel like we're trying to push it through, in some ways we are very limited and our hands are tied when it comes to the number of public hearings that we can have on housing projects per state law.
My understanding of when this went into effect was that if the project didn't need any, if it met the zoning guidelines and everything that's imposed on it. So do all projects then with housing immediately get the 5-meeting rule, or is it just ones that do not need variations
Sure.
from the zoning or guidelines that we set here in the city?
I would have to double check, but per my recollection, the Housing Accountability Act is for all housing projects, regardless of density bonus request for concessions or waivers. I'd have to double check that though.
Yes, I would like to make that a point to please look at that, because I'm confused about that.
This project does request density bonus along with concessions, waivers, and density. So this project is subject to that. This project has 5 public hearings that it can go to before it is approved per state law.
Is it possible to look that up or to get some confirmation about that before we?
For housing projects that do not request density bonus or concessions?
Any concession or anything.
So this type of project that includes any sort of density bonus related requests is subject to the Housing Accountability Act and thus the 5-meeting maximum.
Staff can follow up with the DRC on additional informational items about state law regarding any type of housing project, so we can definitely provide additional information.
Because I know the state is coming down on it, but
Sure.
to understand where we have leverage or leeway.
Yeah, I think that's a further discussion we can have. This project is subject to the 5 meetings, though.
I have one quick question. Did you say, or do you know how tall the AT&T tower is?
I'm sorry.
Do you know how tall the AT&T building is?
No, but I can try and find it.
That's okay.
Kiesel, any questions?
I have no questions for staff.
Okay. I assume that the applicant is present and would like to make a presentation. And I'm kind of hoping you address the RC comments 1 through 8. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name's John Savage. I'm here on behalf of the development team. This is my architect and my landscape architect, which you're well versed with. Very excellent staff presentation, and this is exactly why we're here, exactly as it was laid out. We would like you to comment on the revisions we made per your previous comment review letter that was sent to us. We feel that we've addressed everything, and I'll turn it over to my architect to further explain the changes we've made. Mostly the pictures he will show you that shows the AT&T and our building are right in the ballpark of each other on the south elevation. And on the north elevation, we're further showing how we're widening the alley to create greater distance from the two-story bungalow next to us and with the setback. So I think it's very well shown in Nick's slideshow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I gave you a copy of the PowerPoint that has all of this exact material, and it was specifically assembled to respond to each of the items that were raised in our last meeting. So maybe we could just go to the next image, because each of those items are actually repeated in the images. So the first comment from DRC was that the building should not exceed 75 feet. That was a nice, clear, simple statement on part of DRC. Our maximum height and we took worst case, and actually the ridge can exceed the height, but we're going to the ridge as 72 foot 6 inches from the lowest corner of the site, which is the Santa Clara and Fur intersection. So rather than take some average and find it there, we're showing you the worst case. And in both Santa Clara and Fur Street go up. So if we took it from an average, we could actually make the building taller if we wanted to, whatever that's worth. And then, so the next slide is First Street elevation. Again, that 72 foot 6 inch ridge height is kind of key. Okay, next slide. Top floor shall be stepped back 10 feet from edge of the building on north, south, and west sides. So we looked really hard at this. To be candid, it's a rather kind of overarching requirement. It isn't a standard. It isn't something we see in buildings downtown. We did look at it, and we did step the building back where we felt it was going to help break things down and make it a little friendlier. But it's a rather subjective statement. When you look at buildings like Earl Stanley Gardner, the Ventura Inn, the Masonic Temple, big buildings in downtown, Ventura Theater has a large mass. We don't see that kind of step back. It's not something we see as typical in urban contexts. Yes, of course, we step it back here. We also have the roof terrace and the courtyard, which are huge, substantial step backs for the building. So we would, want to make sure that that's being considered in the commentary as well. I think what we have here is a pretty substantially articulated mass for a quote single building. There's a lot going on here, a lot of attention to different characteristics in different parts of the building. Next slide. Maximize open space on the site. So this was a hard one for me. We had what I was really interested in exploring was what I would refer to as an atrium corridor, where instead of a double-loaded corridor, we had light and air and windows on the interior in that corridor. We gave that up. We pushed the building back, turned it into a straightforward double-loaded corridor, and we gave all of that space to the courtyards. And it's a trade-off, but I think ultimately the design benefits from it. The spaces between the buildings in the courtyard are increased. The courtyard itself is increased. We have more things, more articulation of design and how it's going to be used. So we ultimately felt that was a good change. And next slide, please. So here's a view of that same space looking back. So that building at the back got pushed an additional approximately 10 feet further back to enlarge the courtyard. And the two wings of court space that go off from the courtyard also got enlarged by about 10 feet. Next slide. So sidewalk width shall be 12 feet on both frontages. Again, this is not a city standard. It's what I'll refer to as a subjective requirement. We understand the intention. We want to create lively, comfortable streets and sidewalks. We have varied the sidewalk width, as our staff planner represented. It varies from 9.5 feet to 12 feet. And then, of course, at the corner, we reach out and we grab a large area to create a gathering space and a downtown open space, which we don't have a lot of in these kinds of contexts. And then, of course, we've got a wonderful park right across the street. So that's our response. The existing sidewalks are 8 feet. Next slide, please. Again, just looking at further up the building, the way the sidewalks vary, it's a very pleasant street front, I think. It's very consistent with what else is happening in downtown. Next slide, please. Revisit the corner plaza, possibly enlarge and create more open feel. To actually make the plaza larger would be a big hit on the building. What we did do, the landscape architect is here to speak to it, is we had originally a pretty substantial tree planter that did push into and bite some of the usable space of the plaza. What we've done instead is a tree well and then a low seat wall to define some of that space. But overall, I think we have a pretty comfortable corner open space there for a cafe. There's room for a few rows of tables and chairs and room for people to pass by and room for bicycle parking. And of course, we got the bus stop right there, so it's a good place to wait for the bus. Next slide, please. Remove and replace metal siding on the east facade. Again, the red line there delineates the basic mass of the AT&T building next door. This is not a highly visible facade. A portion of it towards the alley is going to be visible from some public areas, but for the most part, this is quite shielded and hidden from public view. Again, I refer back to other buildings in an urban context, and I use the ones that we're familiar with, the Ventura Inn, Earl Stanley Gardner. These buildings all have very simple rear elevations, side elevations. The articulation is out at the street, and we feel that works, and it's a traditional approach. Next slide, please. Make modifications to the facade on the northwest portion of the building along First Street. So we added some breaks in the mass. I don't know if you remember, but we had a stairwell shaft running up there where the open, and I don't have a pointer, but between the yellow portion and the white portion, that was a solid stair shaft. And what we've done is open that up and just made it an open stairwell, a little bit more like a kind of a traditional fire escape in that aesthetic. I think that actually was a great change. It reduced the visual mass of that side of the building substantially, and we actually liked it a lot. And then we did continue to revise and simplify materials and just change this facade up a little bit and push the whole top floor got pushed back, as Jamie had mentioned as well. Next slide, please. This is maybe even a better view of that, because now you can see the feel of this thing from the street and how that alley is going to feel. And the intention is to set it up so that someday that alley can continue all the way through the block. Don't know how long it will be before that happens, but it can happen. And meanwhile, our portion, I think, adds a nice apron and entrance from First Street into the project, and it allows room for people coming and going from this building to do so without creating hazard. We're trying to be friendly to the Craftsman House across the way. We stepped back that fourth floor. We took the top portion of the front street and articulated it with some Craftsman aesthetic to kind of just to complement that building. It's a subtle gesture. Next slide, please. So, consider widening interior corridors. This is what I was talking about. That rear corridor along the back is now just a standard double-loaded corridor. We have a light well corridor that returns on the right side before it becomes the double-loaded corridor. And then the horizontal court teeing off of our main court got substantially wider. And that means that there's room there for those courtyard level dwellings to have little patios of their own. They can have private patios. Next slide, please. I think that's it. So that's what we've done. I hope that you find it receptive and responsive to your request. And we certainly are interested in any further comments you have. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay.
Do any of the DRC members have questions of the applicant?
I guess just on the, one thing we didn't have in the previous version was the bike lanes, correct? That was new. This is a new addition.
The
to
bike lane in the bus stop?
Yeah, the bus stop.
I think they were there. They weren't there? Oh, okay. So, yeah, I guess the staff reached out to us and asked if we could do that, and we thought it was great.
We also met with the people in the transportation here in the city, and we had an extensive meeting on even to the details of what kind of bus enclosure they wanted and shading for the people waiting. So yeah, we did have a meeting for them before we implemented it. And actually this is an insert that they gave to us, what they would like us to see. So we have just placed their recommendations on our plan.
Thanks for asking, because honestly I forgot that you hadn't seen that. It was in my head. You'd already looked at
I know
that.
we had talked about it, or that was a possibility. You guys were going to study that, and that looks good. And,
great.
Any questions?
Any questions? Member Cormier?
Yeah, with the setbacks that we asked for on the upper level, because, you know, you were talking about it's not in code or it's arbitrary. I think the intention was to have it so that the notion of 5 stories looming on the street, particularly for those on the street. So my question would be, if you were walking on the sidewalk opposite the street, either on Fur or Santa Clara, how much of the 5th story would you see from that, walking along the street?
I'm going to go point. So thanks. I guess I want to take, first of all, I want to take exception to the word looming. I think in the downtown, 3, 4, or 5 stories, that's a normal thing. To me, when you're walking along the street, you're paying attention to the street. I don't see a lot of people walking around like this. I understand the intention of, trying to manage height, and we have people in the community that are concerned with height. When we evaluated this one and pushing it back, what we determined was it simply made the AT&T building stand out more, and that was not one of the things we really wanted to do. So to me, these pieces bookend the substantial setback of the 4-story corner here, which I personally really like. I like the fact that this building embraces and holds that space. Over here, obviously, we have a significant break and a significant setback. And so, again, from my view, getting the variation and the play in the thing is really what counts. We looked at eliminating the column elements up at the top, and so that would give you that constant parapet. But honestly, for me, having that break and that sort of celebration of what's going on the top floor adds visual interest. It's intriguing. That's a cool space. So we could eliminate it, but I think the building would suffer for it if we did. So I hope I know I'm not saying yes, we should do that. I really didn't think that it was an entirely just request to just push everything back 10 or 12 feet.
I had a question. Was it on one of the comments that we were at the northwest corner there that's adjacent to the Craftsman house that we were going to maybe look at dropping that a little bit? Was that something?
And we did do that. Could we go to the rear elevation? And originally that's where the discussion was going, and then all of a sudden the comment was made, push everything back around the perimeter. And that really surprised me. In our original design, this went straight up. And we heard the concern and wanting to try to acknowledge the house, so we did push that back. We pushed it back about 6.5 feet. If we push more, it starts to impede on the livability of the dwellings.
I think I recall in our one comment was that actual corner itself was to maybe drop a bit to then relate better to the arts and crafts house. I think, was that not what was one of our comments? Okay, anyway.
Call that as well.
It could very well be.
And did you guys study that at all?
Yeah, we looked
option?
at all of it, and
Yeah.
you know, there's for us is a balance between responding to the desire for that urban impact and also creating something that's livable and feels good, and for the people living within the project as well. So from my view, we need to balance those things. Am I understanding you're saying you would want the entire building dropped? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that was, I think, a comment, something that was observed or commented on that during the last thing, that in order to kind of more of a stepped down approach to that corner where you have those units on the very top, I think that was what we were asking, if you guys could kind of study what that might start to look like, and how that might, again, kind of give you this more layering up to that height on that one corner. I think in the corner that you have on the Santa Clara there, that's working well, but you just don't have that on here as much. That was kind of where that conversation was before.
Okay.
Brian, can you briefly walk me through your design concept for the Northwest Plaza building?
Northwest.
The plaza, the roof terrace.
Oh, with the plaza at the corner, sorry.
Southwest.
Yeah, thanks.
Wrong concept.
Yeah, I mean, in urban spaces, you make really small moves and they have a big impact, I guess. So that's why I would explain it. Before we had a significant planner that we were thinking people would sit around and that sort of thing. And I think one of the comments was to maybe make that plaza a little more useful. And if you imagine a restaurant use or another use, or just what's going on Main Street right now, the scale of that open space is pretty good. It's not gigantic, but it would definitely be functional for a restaurant use. And so the idea was to create just a simple L-shaped seat wall at the corner, which would sort of serve as a barrier or a subliminal way that this is semi-private and this is public kind of thing. It's a public space, but it's sort of like the businesses downtown with their enclosures for their dining areas. It would serve as an informal separation. And then the tree was just moved out and placed in a normal tree grate condition so that it would still provide shade and still be sort of the iconic tree of the corner, but it would sort of separate that space a little bit, but keep it very, very open. And the seat wall's intentionally wide so that people can sit on it on both sides. So it sort of serves both sides of the plaza, and that's it.
So the public sidewalk intrudes, or is the same material as the semi-public?
Yes.
It's all one.
Yes, it's all open, and it could be. I mean, good design is loose fit, which means that you design it, and then it could be used a number of different ways. It could be used for a number of different uses, and that's sort of the intention, not to over-design it, put too many things in there so that they can populate it with furniture, or they can leave it open and do other things with it.
Any additional questions? Okay, if not, then we're going to open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, is there anybody that wishes to speak?
Yes, we have 8 public speakers. Our first public speaker is Bob Guthrie, and after Bob, we have Lisa Wolf.
They do have the pertinent section
Thank you.
Because it has exceptions and warrants, the 5-meeting rule does not apply. Oh, I have one slide. Get that queued up so it doesn't eat into my time.
Gotcha, Bob. Gotcha.
What was that?
Sorry.
Okay, great.
Oh.
Good evening. I'm going to start by comparing how the applicant did against your recommendations from the last meeting, and that's this slide up here. You had 8 recommendations. Number 1, the building height should not exceed 75 feet. That was done. Number 2, the top floor should be stepped back 10 feet from the edge of the building on 3 sides. That was not done. 3, maximize the open space. It was increased by about 100 square feet. I'd call that a token effort. 4, increase the sidewalk widths to 12 feet on both frontages. That was not done. 5, revisit the corner plaza design, possibly enlarge and create a more open feel. The planter was removed, so I'd say there was some effort, but I think there could be a lot more effort. 6, remove and replace the metal siding. That was done. 7, make modifications to the facade on the west portion of the building along First Street. I'm not sure. That's for you to decide. And 8, consider widening internal corridors, especially on the podium level. The planters were reduced in size. Again, I'd call that a token effort. So if I was to give this a letter grade, I'd give it a C- or a D+. I think it's well within your rights to expect an applicant to take your recommendations seriously. So asking them to come back again after incorporating most, if not all, of your recommendations, I think is very warranted. And as I mentioned, because there are exceptions and warrants, the 5-meeting rule does not apply to this. I mean, just think about it conceptually. I can't talk anymore. We're out of time. Okay, I now want to talk about Park Plaza being out of context with the area. The area, not surprisingly, is Plaza Park. The transect zone for this area is T5.1 and applies to only the buildings immediately surrounding the park. In this area, all but one of the buildings are 1 and 2 stories. The exception is the black Tolman Weicker building at 3 stories and a partial 4th. So in the existing area, there are no 5-story buildings, making Park Plaza out of context. A comparison is drawn to the adjacent AT&T building, implying that because it's tall, it's okay for Park Plaza to be out of character. First off, the AT&T building is in the T6.1 zone. I don't know when it was built, but it was built before the downtown specific plan was written with its specific requirements to prevent a terrible building like that from ever being constructed again. So with that in mind, I don't know why this building would be used for this type of comparison. It just makes no sense to me. Please make additional recommendations for the applicant to reduce the volume of the building so that it will be compatible with the area. And as always, I appreciate all the time and effort you put into reviewing these projects.
Lisa Wolf, and after Lisa Wolf, we have Stephen Quat.
Okay, hi. I'm back again. I'm a little more organized than last time. I had a lot to say, but after looking at the pictures, I think it's very nice that you're considering my house in this. Thank you. Okay, last time there was talk about that corner at my alley to knock it down and not look like that. We did all talk about that last time, I do know that. I didn't see a change. And then also how they drive into the parking structure to go underground for the parking. We talked about trees being there, a block from the alley from my house. There was still a wall, there was trees, and then the pictures I just saw, it's just completely open, meaning the cars would get really close to my house to make a U-turn to go down into the parking. So if that picture's right, that really needs to be looked at from you guys, because the way the alley is, no matter how many feet they put over, that's just really, they need a wall, or however they're gonna do it for the alley, and then for their parking structure, and then down. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. Okay, back to some more of my own parts. Okay, so It went from 63 to 80. That is massive. I just went to the Klamath, I think that's what it's called, on Thompson. They're like a 43 unit. They're huge inside, and I have some friends that moved in there, and they have one car under the ground and no parking out. I know parking's not your issue, but 80 is so much. I've lived in that house over 30 years. I don't know how people are gonna park. Okay. That being said, okay, what else? There was something big. I'm gonna run out of time. Okay, the 5-story, a guy from your architect firm came to my house, knocked on my door, asked if they could take pictures from my balcony. I said yes. My daughter cried and said, no, Mom, don't let him up. I let him up. He took pictures. He told me how it was going to be set back on the alley side. He said that, you know, blah, 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 which was great. But it doesn't look like it changed on the pictures. I really want you guys to consider that corner, because if you're going down Main Street, turning to our great post office, Plaza Park, that's just going to be like a box corner right there. There's going to be no, it's not going to, I don't know, I freaked out. Hold on. I think that's it. I think the alley is the main thing now that I saw the new pictures.
Thank you. Time's up.
There we go again. I messed up.
Stephen Quat. And after that, we have Pete Freeman.
Okay, this building does not make downtown healthy, diverse, and vibrant. The building is too massive.
Sir, if you could actually speak into the microphone, we can hear you, but the recording can't. Thank you.
The building is too massive, it's too tall, it's ugly. If you want to turn Ventura into New York City, you're doing a good job of it. It doesn't meet the downtown specific plan. The building is way too tall. Every building there is not more than 2 stories. They compare it to the ATT building. Nobody lives in that building. They're not bringing 80 units and 300 cars. Where are people going to park at the post office? And they're talking about a restaurant on the corner. Where's the parking for the restaurant going to be? Okay? There's 6 spots for the post office, and they've got to park around the park. There's not enough parking in the building, and everybody's going to be out on the street. But that building, if you go around, put the corner, the one with the restaurant show on it, where he has that cut out on the other corner. Can you change that slide?
I don't know what you're looking for. What are we looking for?
It's there.
The one that showed the open space on the corner with the cutout.
It's there.
You had a different rendering of that picture. No? That one. There you go. Okay. So right now,
Sir, I need you, sir, you need to speak in the microphone. Thank you.
the post office is on this side of the street, okay? Short building, closed. This thing comes out in the street. They're talking about a restaurant there. Where are those cars going to park? They don't have enough parking for the people that live in the building. In the plan, the restaurant has to have like 1 parking spot for every table they're going to have. Where? Where are they putting it? The building is too big. It doesn't fit. I can't change the paint on my house because I have a Victorian house, and they want to keep it specific to downtown. There's Victorians, 1 more block over here. You have all the craftsmen on the other side of the park. On the other side of Plaza Park, all the redone craftsman houses. This does not fit with the neighborhood. It does not fit with the aesthetics of the neighborhood. Thank you. I yield back my time.
Pete Freeman, and after Pete, we have Mark Sirota.
Well, good evening. Can you hear me? There we go. Good evening, DRC members and staff and everybody. While the changes made by the applicant are a move in the right direction, they fall short of what was called for by you in January. During that previous meeting, Chair Antelman said that the elephant in the room is the size of massing. To reduce these, you recommended a 10-foot step back on the northwest and south elevations. While the applicant did provide a less than required step back on the south and west sides, they made no such move on the north side, according to the staff report. Committee member Cormain did say he wanted to see a reduction in the height on the north side. The new proposed citywide development overlays even require the fourth floor to be stepped back 15 feet when a building over 3 stories abuts a single-family home. The applicant has not only not reduced the height of the north side, they have failed to provide for any step back as recommended by you and stated in your motion. Committee member Cormain asked the applicant during the January meeting why the project went from 4 to 5 stories. The applicant's response was due to the affordable units. You just heard a project that provides for a larger percentage of affordable units than this project that is zoned to be 3 stories and is proposed at 3 stories, so no extra stories. Also, there have been numerous projects recently entitled in the downtown area that include affordable units that have not needed to add additional floors. The size and mass of this, which are in the DRC purview, do not fit the character and content of this area, which consists of 1, 2, and 3-story buildings, as stated in the January 2021 DRC staff report, quote, and nearby buildings range from 1 to 2 stories, though the majority within a block radius are 1 or 2 stories. No buildings in the adjacent area other than the AT&T utility building and portions of the Elk Lodge project reach 4 stories. Please don't use the AT&T building as an example of character of this neighborhood. You also asked for 12-foot sidewalks. The applicant has stated they are providing 8 to 12-foot sidewalks. Per the project plans, a very small percentage of those sidewalks are 12 feet. Additional open space was suggested. The applicant has agreed to add an additional 100 square feet, which is a start, but needs to go much further. So please do not recommend this project as currently proposed to the Planning Commission and have the applicant come back to you to continue the improvements you've required. Thank you.
Mark Sorota, and after that we have Wendy Sauter.
Thank you. I just got 2 quotes came out of the downtown specific plan. I won't read them, you can read them, but there are a couple words I do want to point out. The development complements the architecture in the area, and it's somewhat out of scope, but I'll show you. There's views, enhance the views of the ocean, mountains. Next slide, please. Okay, just to remind everybody, the max height is 72.7. It's T5.1, so 3 stories, 3 1/4 stories. This is 5 stories, a 50% increase. And just a question I have, I know there's a big project going on at 211 on Figueroa and Thompson. They've got six stories and 69 feet. So I'm not sure why for 5 stories we have 72 feet. Next slide, please. So, okay, don't laugh. This is a poor man's story pole. Across the way, next to the post office, there's a palm tree. My wife and I were able to measure it. You can't see it very well, but I have a 10-foot scale, took a picture, scaled the tree. That tree happens to be 73 feet down to the sidewalk. Next slide. So that's how high this building is going to be. Okay? Renderings don't, we've talked about story poles before. They're the ones, if you really want to get a sense of height, that's what you want. Renderings, it's really tough to get the proper sense. And to me, that's excessively high in that area. Next slide. Just 2 other views from the park. It's going to totally change the atmosphere of the park with a building that high. And when you let this go, there'll be other ones doing the same things. It's out of context. And the last slide's a bit out of scope for this meeting. It's just that this is in the coastal zone, so views of the ocean are important, and this does going to block ocean views. Likewise, I didn't have a chance, but the building is also going to block views from the park or elsewhere in town of the hillsides. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
We have Wendy Sauter and then Alex Magone.
Good evening, DRC members. The applicant is still asking for well over a full story above what this lot is zoned for. The applicant went from 4 stories initially to 5, as you know. Please ensure that this building fits better into the existing historic area. I appreciate the suggestions that you made in January. The purpose of this committee is to make important suggestions to the applicants, which should be heeded. Please insist that the setbacks, 12-foot sidewalk, and the open space recommendations you made are incorporated. Please also speak to the excessive height compared to all but one building in the vicinity. And I just wanted to read, the Housing Accountability Act was amended to prohibit more than 5 hearings when reviewing a project that complied with the general plan and zoning objective standards when the application was deemed complete. This project doesn't comply. And respectfully, Jamie, when you added the city council meeting, a city council meeting is an appeal. So I don't believe that that applies either. I appreciate all the time that you take to review all of the buildings that we have before you, and hope that you really look back at what your comments were, especially for the woman who lives in the Craftsman home. I really remember the shade and the fact that that was of concern, that whole side of the building. And I hope that you really do keep with that one enhancement that you had suggested. I think it's real important, especially if you live right next. Thanks so much for your time.
Alex Mangoni. Alex Mangoni. And then last we'll have Ross Currens.
Thanks for your time, everyone. For clarity, I thought the bike lane and bus stop area were on the prior presentation from January. I'm just going to bring that up. I'd like to make some comments regarding the committee recommendations back in January. I was a little confused on the DRC recommendation for the building height not to exceed 75 feet, which is still above the DTSP requirement. It'd be great to get a quick clarification on how that was determined, the 75 feet. The building height is certainly an element of the design, and considering this design is the most significant element. The 5th floor was recommended to be stepped back 10 feet. The applicant only set back 6 feet to 6 feet 11 inches. There should not be any compromise here. Currently, you can see the entire AT&T building. I'm not sure how setbacks showing just a small portion would really make any difference from what we're currently looking at. Maximizing open space 100 square feet is inadequate, considering the applicant did not set back the 5th floor or increase the sidewalk width as requested. It seems like they'd put little to no effort into that. And lastly, the DRC requested 12-foot sidewalks at both frontages, and this was not done. Another thing that I don't think we can compromise on. And let's be clear, those are 8 and 9 foot sidewalks. There's cutouts. The way a pedestrian travels, those are 8 and 9 foot sidewalks. I don't think that you received adequate explanation as to why they didn't fully implement your guys' comments and requirements from January, other than they're not standard. And I say requirement because this design and in January was not approved pending changes. It was requested the changes be made and come back to you guys for approval, and I think they did very little. They did slim to none, as was pointed out previously. You know, there's something I mentioned the last DRC meeting. There's a significant amount of square footage in this project that's communal to the residents. In my eyes, there is no reason why they can't reduce the massing of the building by removing some of that communal square footage. There's a gym, a meeting room, a yoga room, rooftop deck. Certainly we can accommodate, at least at a minimum, your guys' changes, if not more. That's it. Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Last we have Ross Currens.
Thanks for hearing me tonight. I just have a few general comments and a few concerns. So This is a very large development for this area. It's an extremely imposing building for this space. Currently, the aesthetic there is very open, and this area just is not occupying anything of this type of height. So 5 stories is very imposing. It would cause a major change in aesthetics to the area. When descending First Street currently, you do have a nice and open view towards the ocean that you walk down in a big green space. Also with this area, the parking, traffic impact on livability, biking, walking safety. After Main Street Moves was put into place, there was a big shift in traffic that moved over to Santa Clara Street. I'm not sure if there's been any thought to the density and traffic that's gone to that area. There's just a couple 4-way stops as you go through both of those areas currently, and it's pretty congested. It's just a small 2-lane street going through there currently. The number of parking spaces is extremely limited as it is. Putting 80 units in there, and I'm not sure how many parking spaces were included in this building, but that would have a lot of parking that would go outside, and then there's guest parking that I'm not sure if that's been considered. It'd be a major overflow to Santa Clara Street, and that's a lot of Main Street parking currently as well for people that are coming and going to events in that area. I just think overall this building is very large, and it would cause a major shift to the regional aesthetics around that area. That's all.
Thank you. That concludes public comment on this item.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Before we deliberate, does anyone have any additional questions for staff based on what we've heard?
If I may, I did want to, over here, excuse me, clarify something which may help when you're designing your recommendations. That one of the speakers had mentioned that the SB 330 does not apply because of the exceptions and warrants. However, and if the planner could confirm this, that there weren't exceptions and warrants in this project, they were density bonus concessions and waivers.
That's correct.
So in that case, the 5-meeting rule would apply.
It still applies.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to add, just to clarify, that an appeal does count towards those 5 meetings. So effectively, you're reserving 1 in the event that an item is appealed as well.
I don't think that impacts at this point. We need to discuss this. We've got a number of recommended changes, total of 8. Some were done, some were ignored, and some were somewhere in between. We need to come up with some type of motion moving forward to the Planning Commission that addresses our concerns. If it would help, we could start with comment number 1 and discuss it and move forward. Or we could do something else. And what the members feel comfortable with.
What's the something else?
Well, we could talk about other issues instead of 1 through 8, but I think since 1 through 8 have been identified and we've already deliberated on them, it might be a good place to start.
Well, I think the issue of the height, and you know, that, to me, that's tied in with the second point of the setbacks. The intention there is to minimize the visual impact of the height by asking for the setback. And I think, and it's also tied into the corner issue on Fur up by the Craftsman House. You know, these are all, the massing is what the issue is here. And, you know, I would still like to see more setback on the top floor, and then really look at that northwest corner and bringing it down a story, just on the corner. It doesn't have to be the entire north side, but just to reduce the massing at that corner, stepping it down, to do some kind of gesture to the Craftsman building there. Am I to understand correctly that we've gone back 10 more feet to provide, or that was there in the original proposal for the ingress, egress to the parking?
That's correct. It was a total of 20 feet before. It's the same now.
Okay, so the only difference we have is a little bit of a 6-foot setback at the very top, or a portion of the north facade. I'm getting. Yeah, I think it needs to be more than that. It needs to acknowledge that historic house a little bit more.
So you still think comment number 2 is still relevant?
Yes, I do.
Can I ask a question of our committee? I wasn't here last meeting, and I did watch the video, and I still don't understand. Where did we come up with 75 feet? I think it was.
That was what we were assuming was the height of the AT&T building.
So we're judging everything off the AT&T building?
The general plan standard, you asked the question, what's the maximum?
I actually know the answer. It came from C1.
Yeah, the C1
That's where it came from. But shouldn't the height come more from the downtown specific plan and that height, and then allowing the exception to go taller than that? Because right now we're saying, okay, it used to be a C1, now the downtown specific plan overlays over that, and we're guided by that. But it has nothing to do with that.
We were looking for a height that made sense, because at that time we were not entirely sure as to what concessions meant for our actions.
Okay. Yeah, it
We've
doesn't.
learned that we are more capable of sending it on to planning commissions, noting that it did not meet.
Okay. Because it's actually 3 stories with 25% if you follow the downtown specific plan. That's right? Yes. So going off the AT&T building, I hope that someone doesn't go off the Crown Plaza or whatever it is now when they do something down at the pier. But I thanks for the answer. I think that we should have been considering the T5.1 of standards, because that to me is more relevant now. Although I don't have a problem with we're going up above that. That's not such a big problem. My opinion of the building still hasn't changed. I still believe it's too tall. It's too massive for the sidewalk and the area. I want downtown to get tall, but we're not going to take care of all of our housing and all of our massiveness in one project. So I know I strayed from that, but I was going to the number 1 of the question.
No, I think we need to look at all these.
But I also do not discount the context of the immediate site, which is showing a tall building. You may not like it, but it's there.
But we actually don't even know how tall that is.
No, we weren't clear when we...
Yeah, I even I measured it off of the Google Maps, but I didn't get 75 feet.
I mean, I tell my students
I could be
the
very wrong.
adjacencies and the context is something viable to consider when you're designing. So,
yeah, and I also think adjacencies that are awful are ones not necessarily to follow.
Massing is massing.
I mean, we don't want to follow, and I don't know. I just don't think we follow mistakes.
Yes, your question about standard of practice. The standard of practice in 1910 and 1920 is probably quite different than our current standard of practice. So,
Chair, can we talk into the mic?
yes.
Thank you.
So, the standard of practice for architectural design
Can we?
A little closer.
A little closer.
is quite different in 1920, 1910 to 2023. So I think making comparisons to existing buildings, which could never probably be approved today, is probably not valid.
Yeah, I mean, we could argue that, but because massing is massing, you see it or you don't. It doesn't really matter when it was built or what style it is. It's there. So, what I'm saying is, you can't discount the fact that they can talk about that as part of their reasoning for massing.
And I agree with you about talking about it.
Member Kiesel, any concerns on your part about?
Yeah, I think I am kind of disappointed that especially that one corner didn't drop down kind of as we were asking for, and I think that would really help because it does feel, I do appreciate the articulation and there's the breaking up of the overall massing. Ironically, I kind of miss the taller chimneys. Because I guess what that does is it does give you, again, more articulation in the vertical plane, and whereas now with the after, it feels a little more, I don't know, squashed at the top. And, you know, again, having traveled quite a bit through like old Europe and places, again, I just always have loved that vertical, you know, up and down that you get, that variety of structure, of architecture. And then, but here again on that one fir corner, it really does feel like it needs to drop there, and it's not. So I am kind of frustrated that didn't happen. I'm also the 12-foot sidewalks. I think that is very important. I understand the architect, the applicant, you guys have your reasons. I'm not quite. Maybe you could explain that again. What is driving the resistance to do that? I get it that a lot of our sidewalks currently aren't there, but we're wanting to go there, and I think that's kind of one of our goals here in the DRC is to try to push these projects in the directions that we overall want to see more often in the downtown. I think on the corner plaza area, I appreciate the simplification of that. I feel the bench could be an issue with skateboarders, whatnot, after just watching the X Games. If you could see it, I couldn't. I had to watch it on TV, but anyway, that's another story. But the maybe if you just rotate that L, or, you know, because the way the tree is kind of kissing that bench, maybe it just wants to be completely open there, and then without that wall, because you're going to have furniture, you're going to populate that with the cafe. Do you really even need that wall there? But I think, especially with that bus stop and that's great. We really need that downtown. That especially in that area, that 12-foot sidewalk is even more important. That 12-foot wide sidewalk. Personally, the tall massings and so I get it. We kind of have to go up. That's kind of what we have to do in the downtown. It is a downtown. We're kind of an urban. We're a city. I grew up in a very small town, not like this. I mean, it's you know, so. But I think, again, stepping down, like some of the things we did, like some of the setbacks, I think that would really help. Those are kind of my thoughts. I do have some more detailed comments on some of the landscaping, but we could get there.
Mr. Chair, can I ask that clarify? I think it will help us.
We need to deliberate.
In terms of the courtyard and space there, I think they did, you know, it's a lot bigger than it was by moving all that space. into that, to make that square courtyard now a more linear courtyard. I think that works. It's acceptable.
Are you talking about the corner?
No, I'm talking about the interior.
Interior courtyard, okay. You were talking about the exterior corner.
I was talking about the corner, but on the interior courtyard, yeah, I appreciate that it got bigger. I think some of the things that I saw before, that I think there could be maybe a little better improvement on the articulation of the spaces in there, but that I could go more into that detail if we're ready to go there.
Well, I'll jump on your exterior southwest corner really quick before you go on.
Are you going to shut me down again? Okay.
No, not yet. I actually think that's to me the best part of the building and how it steps back and has a corner and creates space. I think
Exactly.
I don't think you were not saying
No,
that.
no, I love that corner. That's a great space.
I don't know about the bench. I think it's something to help contain it, whether it's trees or whether it's something that helps create a room there is acceptable. Definitely going to have skateboards on it. That doesn't bother me necessarily, but I think that corner is for me, it's one of the most positive space, and the bulb out really helps it out. I mean, that really becomes a space with the bulb out, and in this rendering, the truncated domes are yellow, and the other one they were more subtle, which would be really great if you guys have control of that to not have these yellow ones. But I think that corner's nice.
I agree with you. But I'd like to see it a little larger, and I think maybe enhanced pavement would be more appropriate, so you could separate the public from the semi-public.
But if you have the same material on the ground and they come up and they put a table on it, I think that it feels more like it's our space. I'm probably not going to live here, so the building's not going to be mine. But that corner is everybody's in the city, and I think that gesture of that corner is great, and I personally think it's okay for the material to go through and it just to feel like a bigger plaza. If you could have some delineation, but I don't think it has to be a total difference. I think it would probably still be successful if they change the ground material, but I think it's successful as one as well.
Yeah, kind of like how that you can kind of move through that space. It could be a cut through when you don't have the tables there, and it's not being activated by the cafe at the time. I guess my one problem with the bench is you got the tree well right next to the bench, and that creates kind of a negative tension.
Yeah,
I think you want airspace there. It feels like when that tree would grow larger, could that become an issue? So that's why maybe if you flipped it, somebody could be sit at that corner, looking at the corner, and then you would have the tree in front of you, unfortunately, but that might help it breathe a little more. Or again, I don't even know if you need that bench there, to be honest. Could be outdoor furniture, whatever.
Right.
But I appreciate that plaza.
Yeah, I think the corner's great.
I think we're looking for some type of motion.
But I do have some comments on the plaza area. On that would be, the podium. If we go to that. So the one thing, the before and after, there's some sadness to see that you did kind of lose a little bit more, you had a little more width. You had yeah.
No, that's
okay.
fine.
Whoa.
It's the design ghost.
Yeah. It's time to go. Okay. But again, the widening of the greater plaza, I think that makes it worthwhile because then you have more usable space for all of the residents. So, I applaud that. My one concern would be just the way the planter shape is. It's kind of got a piano and it kind of goes into this round raised planter that goes from brick and there's a different material. I'm not quite sure. I think that could use more study in how that you're defining the outdoor spaces right around that. I don't know if it's the most efficient shape, and it feels a little awkward where you go from that raised brick planter to this kind of curvy, kind of piano shape. I think I would ask that would be studied a little more. And again, like, how is it working with adjacent tables and chairs in that open area? That would be my concern there. I think the roof garden is awesome. It looks great. I think all the spaces there are working as they should. On the ground floor, I would just, for trees, I would say the umbel I think that gets that black sooty mold in the corner, and those can get quite large. I might rethink that tree there, although I love that tree. I don't know if that's the best spot for it. And then also the Quercus lobata at the corner, why that is a majestic specimen tree, beautiful, beautiful tree. I don't know how well it will do on the coast. I don't usually see those this close to the coast, so maybe another tree might be better served for that. Brian, I know you're a great landscape architect, and if you feel confident that's going to make it, then I'm okay with it. But those would be my general comments.
So you're saying, or maybe I just should say what I think, that I think the change in the courtyard on the podium level is an improvement for the courtyard, and I mean, and that was just a hallway on the edges, and now it's actually moving that one area. It could become
It's
more
larger
courtyard.
now.
It's larger. Yeah.
You can. I think there's more uses you can have in there. I know this is still preliminary level. That I think that's some more study of that space and how you are articulating it, and then with those planters, I think there's just some things there that the shapes, how they're coming together, it's not working for me. So that would.
Yeah, I think that improves it as far as massing as well. It improves the west elevation, and it also improves the massing of as the building goes up the street. For me.
Do we have a consensus? Do we need to hear from the architect on any additional information or comments?
I don't.
I don't think I do.
Unless you guys want to hear something.
I don't.
I would like to. I think there's a lot of comments about the 12-foot sidewalks. I think if the architect, if you would be willing to kind of comment on that a little more, like what is driving, why you guys don't want to do the 12? Is it the pencil? It doesn't pencil out. What?
Okay, then I'll open the public. 3 minutes.
Can I ask my question also? Answer his and ask my question. Mm-hmm. Bottom line is the lot is a certain size. They bought that lot. Now the city is saying, yeah, give us 2 feet of that to make our sidewalks wider. It's okay. That pushes everything. It makes all the dwellings smaller, or it makes the courtyard smaller. We can do it. The parking is tight always. Parking drives so much of this. My request would be if that's going to be a comment or a sort of a dictum from the DRC that you guys want to see that, I request that be a recommendation to the Planning Commission, not that we come back here to show you 12-foot sidewalks. That would be my request for all of us, frankly. I know that we have a limited number of hearings. I want to ask the question because I think maybe I didn't understand the original. Jamie, if we could go to that slide that shows the west corner with the Craftsman house in it. I don't know where it is either. No, no. That doesn't show what we need to see. It was in my slide, I know, but I thought it was in here too. There it is. Yeah. Okay. So maybe I didn't understand. What I thought I was hearing was that this whole thing was supposed to step down, and I didn't see how that was appropriate or was going to work. But what I'm maybe hearing is that the top floor should be pushed back. And if you wanted us to push that back 10 or 12 feet, that Craftsman house element, I think we could do that for sure. But I don't think I fully understood what the request was. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I think we were requesting that it did get dropped down. Am I wrong in that?
What get dropped down?
That corner.
The entire height.
So this entire, all of this?
You drop one level.
So lose those apartments is what you're saying?
Well, that's up to your
Oh,
design.
just one? Okay, well, if that could be made clear, if that's something that you guys want and you want to make a recommendation to Planning Commission, that would be my request.
Closing the public hearing.
Thank you.
So the width of the sidewalks and in the downtown and everywhere does have an impact on how downtown specific plan and other things are generated. So the width to height ratio, that when they're supposed to be 3 stories and then the sidewalk, the building goes out to the property line. I totally appreciate that the owner wants to take care, go to their property lines, which they have the right to. But they're also raising the building much higher than what the downtown specific plan says. So it seems like it's a good neighbor, good developer gesture to give the 12 feet. So when you say that the city's asking for it, they're also, the downtown specific plan's also asking for 3 stories and 25%, 4 stories.
So you're comfortable in asking the planning commission to consider comment number 4?
I think so. It's going to be narrow with 4 stories with the 5th story on there. It's going to feel more narrow. I think our sidewalks are too narrow anyways. I think they're too narrow at the Stanley Gardner building. I think they're too narrow at Finney's. I think they're just too narrow. And unfortunately, there's a lot of places we can't do anything about it. We could have a good gesture, friendly gesture from the developer that they could move it back and help out our urban situation. I think that the wider sidewalk and having people be able to walk by it's just a good gesture. I don't think it's required. It's their property line.
How about DRC comment number 2? Do we have consensus on that as a group?
Are you talking about the width of the sidewalk? Oh, okay.
This one, no. Number 2 is the top floor should be stepped back 10 feet from the edge of the building on the north, south, and the sides. The 5th floor setback is 6 feet 4 inches on First Street, and there is varied setback of 6 to 11 feet on Santa Clara side. Do we still have consensus that this is something we would like to forward to the Planning Commission?
I agree with that.
We got 2 and 4. Number 8 is consider widening the interior corridors, specifically on the podium side. I think that was accomplished. So it seems like it's 2 and 4 seems to be where we're kind of focusing.
It was widened on one side, not widened on the other, which is okay because the other side's a corridor, right? So on the side where it's actually open, it was widened.
What I'm hearing is we still think the building's too massive.
Well, I mean, as Commissioner Gordon mentioned, it exceeds the zoning for the site, so we can add that to the motion. Well, there's no motion, but
Time. I'm just trying to get consensus so we can develop a motion.
I think it's pretty clear that I feel that way. Yeah. Okay.
Does anyone want to spell this out or try to attempt a motion?
You don't have a problem with the height, though.
I just on that one corner. I'd like to see that drop. I think that would help because you got somewhere you have that happening on the rest of the except for of course the AT&T building, but that doesn't concern me.
just think we need to make our concerns very, very clear to the planning commission.
So are we going to approve to send on with these provisions?
That's one possibility, we could do that, that it's forwarded with the following recommended modifications or changes to the design.
Seems like that's what we all do now. We do now.
That's all we do, is we recommend it.
This is what we do. Yep.
Okay, well, I guess I'll attempt a motion here. I make a motion to move this to the Planning Commission with the provision that the top floors still be set back 10 feet from the top of the fourth floor, I guess.
Stated in comment number 1?
Yeah, stated comment number 2.
2, okay.
And as stated in comment number 4, increase the sidewalk widths to 12 feet in all circumstances. And then the addition to reduce the northwest corner by 1 story as a transition to the alley and the adjacent 2-story Craftsman house. And is there anything you wanted to add about the courtyard?
The corner courtyard?
Yeah.
Yeah, just, I think maybe just getting rid of the bench and it works.
You want them to consider it or get rid of it? I guess we're just considering everything.
Yeah. Yeah, or rotating it or removing it. And then the tree, and then also rethinking that tree species. But something that's more, I think, more coastal tolerant.
So when you say rethink, you're saying you have concerns?
Yes. But maybe Brian could convince me that that's going to work there. If he thinks it's going to work there,
And then I'm sorry, is
What's that?
that what you want to add?
Yeah.
'Cause I also want to also make sure that it's noted that the building exceeds the zoning for the downtown specific plan.
We have consensus on that. That's going to be included in the motion.
To repeat that?
The building
We're
exceeds.
noting that it
Yeah.
exceeds what's allowed in the downtown specific plan zoning
I'm down with that.
in terms of height. In terms of height.
Anything additional, or you'll have to see in that motion?
I don't have any amendments to the motion. I agree with most of it. I don't have any amendments.
You have it all down? Okay, so we do have a motion. We do need a second.
And then just on the, I guess this is additional thing as far as the podium floor. It's a suggestion, I don't know if it's I know it's preliminary, but maybe rethinking that planter. That's it.
You wish to include that in your motion?
Yes.
On the podium floor? Okay.
Okay, and we do have a motion, and we need a second.
I'll second it.
Any possibility of reading the motion?
Yeah.
No? You're going to do it off the
That's true.
recording?
Okay.
Do it on the recording? Okay.
Yasani, do you think you can read it into the record for us?
I'll give it a shot. Let's see. So the top floor, per comment number 2, is to be set back the 10 feet. Comment number 4, increase to 12 feet in all circumstances. Reduce the northwest corner by 1 story in the transition to alley to the 2-story Craftsman house. Number 8, if you could clarify a little, I have rotate or remove something in the courtyard with more.
That's the seat, the bench.
Oh, the bench, okay.
The
And
built-in
then use a more coastal tolerant tree species.
It's a seat wall.
Seawall?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Seawall?
Yeah, it's a seat wall. That's what it's technically called. Not a
Thank
bench,
you.
it's a seat wall.
And then in the podium floor, rethinking the planter, and a note that this exceeds the zoning for downtown specific plan in terms of height. Does that capture everything? Okay.
Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Sure. Member Cormain?
Yes.
Member Kiesel?
Yes.
Member Groudon?
No.
Chair Antleman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Completes that item. We move forward to staff communication. Anybody else has any comments? But I'd like to see more complete plans presented to us, more complete packages, including sections, window details, landscaping. It's difficult enough to make decisions even when we have everything. When things are missing, it makes it even more difficult.
Yeah, it's been a number of times now that we have had to do a last-minute scramble for the landscape. So,
I believe
yeah,
you have a
especially.
checklist that you can work with.
The last one, the second one was complete. Do we agree with that? Okay, second one was, yeah, the second one was complete. Okay, oh, okay, all right. Because it had sections, it had landscape.
Anybody else have anything before I move on to something else?
I would still like a clarification on the issue of the meeting numbers and, you know, the 5 meeting rule. In terms of, you know, what constitutes following the zoning guidelines or not. I mean, if they're going for the concession, that doesn't fall under, you know, the fact that it doesn't meet the zoning.
No, and so the state density bonus law actually specifies that use of a concession or a waiver doesn't constitute non-compliance with a general plan or zoning either. So it is very specific that they're to be separated effectively. We can definitely bring this to a future meeting though and have a kind of more general conversation about it.
Because I'm not, you know, I don't really know much about what the state's coming down with and how it affects us, and obviously it affects us very seriously.
I agree with you that it would be really nice to have a clarification. We got explanations, but I'm still slightly confused because I've read it and I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but I have read it and I kind of took something different from it, but I'm probably wrong. But it would be nice to have a clarification meeting or just someone come in and maybe that be an agenda item.
We can certainly bring that back.
Does it include any presentations that are done as advisory when they come to us just as a preliminary without having entered into the formal review process? Does the 5 meetings include that?
It does, it still counts. So as long as
I'd
they've...
like to discourage that because I'd like to see it ahead of time before the formal process.
Right, so that still does count as a meeting, as long as there is an application in place, which is what occurs prior to even coming to you earlier in the process, that would count as a meeting. So it's complicated. The applicant could certainly waive the 5 meeting requirement, but it doesn't preclude them from suing us if we don't meet the 5 meeting requirement. So it's a complicated requirement. We can definitely come back and talk through it a bit more. And obviously for this project, it's made a little bit easier that there isn't historic preservation committee as well. So when you add that in, that's another group that also counts towards that 5. So it's just something to think about. And we can certainly include that information as well for projects that particularly have come to you already, but projects in general, just at the beginning to queue you up. This is one of X number of meetings that we have planned, DRC, historic preservation, then planning commission, et cetera. This way you can kind of see the process and where you fit into that process. And I think it's also really helpful for the public just to see where we're at in the process as well. So we can work on beefing that up for future meetings.
What happens
That would
if
be
we
good.
have a joint meeting with historic?
It counts.
Is 1 or 2?
as one public hearing, since it is a joint meeting, but it absolutely counts. But you can't have a joint meeting where you both make the recommendation, right? So they do have to be separately held meetings to have the recommendations occur. So we wouldn't be able, in the event that there was some massive project that necessitated that, it's possible it could happen, but it wouldn't, you would still have separate meetings to make the recommendations to the planning commission.
Just one more meeting. We did that.
They would be very tough to combine, to be totally honest. You know, in an information session type situation, it's easier, but once you start deliberating, have public comment, you really have two completely separate purviews in this case.
And we can't continue? and be the same
Continuing it
meeting?
means that there's another meeting. So, for example, for this most recent project, it was continued to a future public hearing, and then another hearing was held. Even if the public meeting is closed, if you close the public hearing, it's number of meetings. And so it really was a limitation that the state put so that you couldn't continue to keep tabling items and have them on the table forever. So they really, restricted city's ability to take a number of meetings, particularly in these earlier meetings prior to approval. And ultimately, if you get to that fifth meeting, you do need to take action, or the project is considered approved legally.
In this case, I think the first application was prior to the state law, right? Is that right? The very first one, a long time ago of this last project.
I don't believe so.
So when it was a long linear building that was 3 stories plus, and then when it went to whatever
This
that
law
was.
has been in effect for quite some time.
Okay. So prior to 2017 or 18 or whatever that was. 2018.
When was this applied for?
it was first heard by DRC in 2018. 18. It was when it was a long linear. Okay, so that was my original question. So that was actually a different proposal. So this project, the 2 projects you showed us originally, that is not this project. That's a different applicant. Okay.
So that was withdrawn, and then new applications were submitted.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
And I want to make staff aware of something. As architects, every time we renew our license, we're tested on handicap requirements, ADA. The state has a new requirement now called net zero, and I don't know if you're aware of this, and I'm thinking this could have impact on our future. I do have some information for you on that, so that's something you might want to forward to Netta and take a look at it, since we're as architects, we're all being impacted by it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Just from a staff perspective, I just wanted to let you know that our next design review committee meeting is August 16th. Thank you so much.
Be here. All right. Meeting is adjourned.